Travel and exploration are obviously huge topics within the tabletop hobby, and I can jump on YouTube and quickly type in, interesting travel TTRPG, and what I'll get is a ton of videos with all kinds of information. But why is it that the vast majority of them are focused around the mechanical aspect of the game, and that in an effort to make this stuff interesting, the advice is always some sort of baked-in system that should somehow make it fun? Whether that's random encounter tables, a system for planning out the journey, or any other way you'd approach, it's always in the meta decision-making portions of the game rather than the in-character experience. This relates back to my previous video about embracing the strange, but I think what is being overlooked is the experience of these overland environments rather than how best to handle travel mechanically. No amount of system design or gamifying the travel portion of an adventure or campaign is going to make it interesting. And listen, I'm not against good travel mechanics, right? I think they're necessary for that side of the game, but I think where it fails is that even these creative systems treat wilderness like a backdrop, a place where players pass through to get to the real action. No amount of rolling or whatever it might be will make the forest anything more than dirt and trees. Too many creators out there treat the wilderness like a minor inconvenience. You might slow down the party on occasion with a weather roll or an encounter that goes violent, but otherwise, it's basically just scene dressing for the stuff that you've decided is more important. The thing is, when you treat the wilderness like an afterthought, like it's just a series of checks or random encounters, you're doing a disservice to your game. The wilderness isn't just a thing that happens between travel locations. It can be one of the most dynamic, mind-bending, and dangerous parts of your campaign or setting if you just stop playing it safe. Let's be honest, players expect dungeons and ruins to be weird at least in some way. They expect puzzles, traps, and all kinds of hidden dangers. But when it comes to the open world, dungeon masters tend to pull back. It's just a forest, nothing of note. But why? Why are we caging our creativity the minute we step outside the city walls? Why is there this expectation that the wilderness is supposed to be normal? Nature itself is strange. Every inch of it can be as strange or as dangerous as the most vile dungeon you've ever rolled up. And I find that dungeon masters play their world too straightforward. They rely on the safety net of what their players already know. Forests are green, deserts are hot, and mountains are tall rocks to climb. This is lazy thinking though, and it's the same kind of uninspired design that leads to boring encounters and uninvolved players, that makes dungeon masters hand-wave a huge part of the game. What is the point of working on and building out an entire fantasy world if you're just going to color inside the lines when it comes to these aspects of the game? The wilderness is the experience. It can shape your campaign in ways that dungeon crawls and city adventures just can't. Players are in an environment where their characters are extremely vulnerable, not just because of the hostile creatures that may be near them, but because nature itself is hostile. Instead of leaning into that, people water it down. They treat a dangerous mission through the forest as a stroll through the park where it might rain heavily and a bum is overly aggressive when asking for change.
Where's the money, Lebowski? You want that money, Lebowski? Bunny says you're good for it. Where's the money, Lebowski? Where's the money, Lebowski? Where's the fucking money, shithead?
But what if the wilderness wasn't just a backdrop, right? What if it wasn't neutral, if it was actively working against the players? Picture this. The party is crossing a forest that, on the surface, looks normal, but over time, subtle things start to happen. Maybe the trees always seem to be leaning just a little too much towards the players, like they're listening to their every word. Shadows stretch out further than they should, and the path that they thought they followed in is suddenly lost to them, as if it were never there. These small, unsettling details build a sense of paranoia and unease, and before you know it, the players are on edge, second-guessing everything about their surroundings. And that's when they realize they're not just walking through the forest anymore. They've stepped into a place where the rules are different. They realize that they've been walking inside circles for hours, not just because they're lost, but because the forest is folding in on itself, looping them back to the same clearing over and over again. And the more they try to escape, the more the landscape warps and bends underneath them. This is how you turn the wilderness into a living, breathing nightmare. Not by throwing some random encounters their way, but by making the environment itself a force of nature, literally and figuratively. And the thing is, it's not even about punishing the players or making them suffer for the decision to travel through the woods. It's about making them feel small in a world that is so much bigger, so much weirder and more dangerous than they could ever imagine. It seems like dungeon masters are afraid to lean into that kind of strangeness. They're worried about the pacing or about frustrating their players. But you know what frustrates players even more? Bland, uninspired overland journeys where nothing interesting happens. You think the players are going to remember rolling for weather conditions or handling the mechanical side of the game? Come on now. The wilderness can be as rich and deep as any city or dungeon if you stop thinking of it as empty space. There's no such thing as empty space in good world building. You have the tools at your disposal to turn every inch of your wilderness into something meaningful. But too many creators just don't take the risk. They play it safe. They fall back on tropes and cliches, and they assume that the wilderness is just a break in the action. But the wilderness should not be a break. It should be a crucible, a test of endurance for the players. The wilderness is where you can show your players that the world they're in is vast, dangerous, and utterly alien to them. It's not just a place to walk through, it's a place to survive. That's how you turn the environment into an antagonist. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be that overt. Sometimes it's more about what you don't explain. The best strange wilderness isn't always about throwing magic or supernatural phenomena in the players' faces. It's just about a sense of dread or disorientation, of things not quite lining up. That's how you create tension in the wilderness, not just with encounters or monsters, which you should have, but by making the players feel like they've stepped into a place that doesn't follow the rules that they know, a place that's older and more hostile than they can understand. This isn't just about making the wilderness, spooky for the sake of it. It's about making your players realize that the world that they're in is alive, and it's not playing by their rules or expectations. You want your players to be explorers, right? So give them something worth exploring, something beyond here's some rocks and some trees. Make them engage with the land as if it's a living entity with its own agenda. Let's talk about pacing for a second, because I can already hear people saying, but my players don't want to spend sessions getting lost in the woods. Really? Or do they just not want to spend time in a boring wilderness? Because I guarantee you, if the environment is throwing them curveballs, if they're solving puzzles about how the landscape shifts or grappling with the realization that things around them are not as they seem, then they'll want to dig deeper into the mysteries of this place. If you're just using it as filler, then you're just running a travel montage and missing out on a prime opportunity to test your players with a unique experience. Stop wasting your wilderness. Use it to mess with your players, and don't just push it into the background as scenery. It deserves better than that, because even now, with every modern tool or equipment available to us at hand, any one of us could go up into the mountains or out into the woods and not make it back. So, let me know how you feel about this. What's your experience with travel and tabletop games? Do you prefer the mechanical approach and just want to get it over with, or do you want something more out of your journeys? Either way, thanks for watching. I am Trill, and I hope you enjoyed.